the antidote to the broken cookie effect, how you can beat that, is with a 4-step system that I've developed called the SNAP system. And the reason there are 4 pieces, and it's not as simple as raising your prices, because if it were that simple, everybody would do that every year and just call it a day, right? But it's not simple, exactly to your point. So the SNAP system stands for S, stop believing the myths. N, narrow your focus. A, assess your value. And P, practice your power. And this actually is the structure of my book, which is called Your Hidden Advantage. And that's a great place to start, because not only will you learn the concepts around this, but also there are exercises. And when you go through those exercises, it will help you gain some clarity, because a lot of the reason that we don't change our pricing or add structure to it is because we're afraid. And because sometimes we think, well, that's not fair. But remember, you have choices. So here's what I typically recommend is add structure to your pricing, build a pricing model. It makes you more confident because there's a rationale behind how you're pricing, and do that only with new clients and leave your current clients alone. You can change the pricing over time with your existing clients, but there's no big hurry. And your new clients won't really know the difference. So going back to the SNAP system, stop believing the myths. So those are all those limiting beliefs, like pricing. I price based on what the market can bear. And that is, that's kind of my pet peeve, because there's no such thing as what the market can bear, as long as you understand that there's a price point for every buyer. And we see that all the time. We see that in retail, right? There are different stores. You can buy a blouse in any of those stores, but which woman shops in which store depends on how much money she can spend and what she thinks is important. And your buyers come to you with that same mindset. So if you can build what I call the perceived value, the value in the mind of your buyer, then every step you take to build value helps your buyer understand your pricing, your compensation, and there isn't any pushback. Now, the important part of that is the N, narrow your focus, because that's about finding right fit clients, what I call ideal buyers. And a lot of times we're waiting for the phone to ring. We only have an inbound process. Sometimes we don't have a process at all. We're waiting for the phone to ring, and then we're winging it, trying to figure out how do we convince this person to buy from us. And that approach does not work. Or if it works temporarily, all of a sudden it will stop working and you will be shocked and horrified that now what do you do? Your job as the business owner is not to convince anyone of anything. That's just not your role. Mm-hmm. If you provide an expertise, or if you provide any kind of service or even a product is a little bit easier because you have a supply chain and you can price your product partially based on the expenses of producing that product. With a service company, sometimes it feels like we pick a number out of thin air. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't feel good. So building a pricing model is really important. But the SNAP system is in that order for a reason, because the limiting thinking is your first issue. So I teach in my book, how do you shift the way you think? The second piece, narrow your focus, is about finding those buyers who understand the value you bring. And that means they also will understand your pricing model. And they're going to be such great clients because they already value you. And the assess your value is about building your pricing model. And I teach how to do that in the book as well. And the last piece is practice your power. That is all about communicating. And the huge challenge we have as women is that we're typically raised not to talk about ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that if you talk about yourself, it's bragging. And that doesn't feel good. So I'm based in Houston, Texas, in the US. And we have a saying here in Texas that it's not bragging if it's true. And I grew up believing that we can talk about ourselves effectively without it feeling like it's bragging. So that is part of what I teach as well, is how do you communicate assertively and with confidence? And I teach very specific techniques to do that.